Speaking task number 4 is your second integrated speaking task, and it is the last reading and listening speaking task. So you're going to have a text first. This is a little different than your last text, your last reading in speaking task 3, because this is academic. It's more similar to what you read during the reading section of the test at the very beginning of your TOEFL. But it's very short. Again, this is 1 or maybe 2 short paragraphs. So you only have a short time to read, 45 or 50 seconds. And just like with speaking task number 3, it's usually 45 seconds. You're going to have a definition or an introduction to a topic. It could be anything academic, anything you would read in a textbook. Maybe it's about the changes of the moon, how it shrinks and grows. Maybe it's about how we categorize different animals and how we categorize spiders by their bodies. Maybe it's about mood-changing music, that different music affects the way you think, affects some brain chemicals, and changes your mood, changes your emotions. This is, again, a general introduction. It's something that you might see at the beginning of an essay, at the beginning of a chapter, early in some longer text. If you look at the reading section of the TOEFL and you take a reading passage, many times you could use the first paragraph or the first few sentences from that long reading passage as a text for speaking task number 4. Sometimes that doesn't work, but sometimes it does, because it's a very similar set of topics. Nature, science, earth, it could be really psychology, anything that's academic, anything you might study in school. The recording is going to be similar to the lectures that you hear in the listening section. It is a classroom lecture with no students speaking. You will only hear the professor. The professor will explain the importance or the application of the idea which you read about. While the reading is more general and more of an introduction, the recording gives real-world specific examples. These are concrete things that you can picture, things that you can imagine. As I said, they are the details. There are usually 2 important parts to the listening, to the lecture. Unlike speaking task 3, where you will hear 2 parts of a conversation which are similar to 2 parts of a reading, in speaking task 4, those 2 important parts are only noticeable in the lecture. The reading does not make it so clear. Sometimes the reading shows 2 details, but it's pretty rare. So let's take an example to understand better what I mean about the relationship here. Let's think about spiders' bodies. And if this is actually the TOEFL, it would be academic. You would hear the word spider, but that's not a very scientific word. The professor would use the more scientific word, which this is really about, arachnids. Now, what would you hear about spiders' bodies? Well, first, what would you read about arachnids' bodies? You might read something that tells you different living things have different categories based on their bodies. And we categorize insects, bugs, based on their bodies, similar to how we categorize spiders based on their bodies. Spiders and insects are very similar, but we can tell the difference by their body shapes and features. Now, we have no real details in that, just an idea. In our listening, in our lecture, we would hear more about this idea of arachnids compared to insects. That's spiders compared to bugs like flies or mosquitoes. You might hear that spiders have two body sections. A spider has only the two sections, and that insects like flies or ants have three sections. You would hear that spiders don't have antennae. An ant has an antenna. A fly has antenna. Spiders have like teeth or mouth parts here, but they don't have antenna. And this would be in a longer lecture with more and more detail, but these two specific ways would be the most important parts for you to hear. Okay. The timer is very similar to speaking task 3. You have 45 seconds to read, or possibly 50. You'll listen for 1 to 2 minutes. The lecture is usually a little bit longer than the conversation in speaking task 3. It's about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. You'll read the question and hear it in your headphones. Then you'll have 30 seconds to plan. You already have notes. And then you'll have 60 seconds to speak. And when you're done speaking, that's the end of task number 4.